Who are we? Are we expect? I don't. Not from our side.
I think we got
Yeah,
everybody
was
right, Pete?
Yeah, was Greg gonna be on or?
He's on.
Greg's
Oh,
on.
okay.
Greg and Dave are on as well in case anything technical comes up, but I don't know if you want me to start, Pete, or do you want to start?
Yeah, first I'm glad that Terry and Jim are available. Doug and I had a conversation earlier this week, and obviously the bid results were more of a surprise than anything else. I mean, we knew it was gonna be a little high, but it's up there, that's for sure. So we just wanted to, maybe a little history first, and then, talk about the funding side of it and what we've done with the water district so far, funds towards this project. And then we just got the actuaries from Chuck Bastian's office, and Janine sent a sheet out to everybody with that this morning. So, yeah, I guess Bill, go ahead, and
Yeah.
obviously Canandaigua folks, interrupt anytime you got a question.
Yeah, I'll just give a little background so everybody knows. Terry, I know you've been around and you're probably aware, but this Brickyard Road tank issue has been an issue and has been studied. I looked back, I couldn't even remember, but all the way back to 2005, back when Mike Guyan was with us. So,
Hey, Bill. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. Just two things I forgot to. And actually, Supervisor Simpson just joined us, but we're also recording this so that I can share it with the rest of our board. We'll still have the presentation and stuff Monday night for the town board, but this is more of like informal, just chit chat. Just FYI. So.
sure. Yep, no problem. I saw that. Welcome, Jared.
Hi.
I'll give you a little background. You're probably not aware of much of this background, but this tank has been studied since 2005. I think it was around that time that a large transmission line was constructed outside of the city. And at that time, the tank became what we call locked out. So basically the hydraulic grade or the pressure in the system is higher than the tank, which means that the water in the tank doesn't really exit the tank or get utilized until there's a high demand or a fire flow. And then when that happens, we do see significant pressure fluctuations in the system below 20 PSI in some areas that is against the health department standard. So two things, the pressure in the system is dropping below the standard, and the health department has cited us for this. And basically the tank's locked out. So stagnant water sits in there for a long period of time, then exits the tank and it has the risk for a health hazard, basically. So that's what the health department's been concerned about over the years. They've been very patient with us. We've studied it to death. I know a lot of people have asked about, well, what if we build a larger transmission main? When Jeff Astles was the acting supervisor, we studied it in depth because he was just really concerned about having to spend the money on the tank and the transmission line. It's just not feasible to build a transmission line large enough to get flow out of the city and also suffice for fire demand and then fire flow, I should say, and then we just don't have fire storage at that point because we have no storage tank. So pumping systems have been studied all the way back to 2005. So both exiting the existing tank and coming into the existing tank. And when there's not enough supply, it doesn't matter whether we have a large transmission main or a pumping station. All that's been studied to death. So I just wanted to, I know there's been some questions. Is there any other way out of this? We've looked at everything. I can tell you that the tank is the option that was settled on back in 2015 is when the latest study was done. And it was updated with our design parameters for this design project. But I'll stop there. Does anybody have questions on the need for the tank and understanding of why we are recommending to go forward?
Bill, when you say negative pressure or lack of pressure, is it, I know we call it Canandaigua Farmington, but is it in Canandaigua or mainly in Farmington?
It's both. And it's a wave that goes all the way through, even to North Farmington. It's buffered a bit in North Farmington, so they're not impacted as much because of the pressure reducing zones. But the pressure drop, and where we see the most significant is because of Pactiv, which we've talked about. We went out there, we met with Pactiv, we understand their system. They're actually drawing water off of the large transmission main with pumps. And when they do that, right at the city limits, it's dropping the pressure all the way through. The tank will actually help that and buffer that because we're going to raise the hydraulic grade of the tank to help backfeed Pactiv when they're drawn and when they have fire flow. If we ever had a fire and Pactiv was drawn at the same time, we would have a very serious problem on our hands. We'd probably collapse pipes, I would imagine. It's a question for Derek, but it was a big concern when we saw how much Pactiv was impacting the pressure. And I don't know if we sent it to you, Jim. I apologize if we didn't. I know that we've reviewed it with Robin. We have all the data. We put pressure data loggers in the system in various locations, and we have it. We needed it to know where to set the hydraulic grade of the tank. So,
But Bill, to Jim's question there, if we fed Pactiv a different way, is there really the need for this?
you'd have to have a direct line right from the city tank right to Pactiv, I think, in order to do that. Now, keep in mind though, that Pactiv is the largest impact, but that doesn't mean that another person that's going to draw fire flow still drops the pressure across the system. So even if we do that, we still need a tank that's going to accommodate max day demand, over 2 million gallons a day, and 3,500 gallons a minute of fire flow in various portions of the system, both between the city and the tank and beyond the tank. So when those two things occur right now, first of all, the tank doesn't have enough volume that's there, and it's not at the right pressure. So it doesn't even pull from the tank until someone starts to draw that 3,500 gallons per minute. And then you still have the health hazard issue to deal with. So.
But isn't that primarily going north to Farmington?
Water demand?
Yeah.
I would say gut feeling, there certainly is more demand going north. But there's still demand. I mean, Pactiv is a big demand when they draw fire flow, but there's other demand. The tank is going to serve the whole area pretty much. I mean, it's not going to be as much when you get out to Manchester, probably. The pressure drop is not as much. I think at one point, Derek developed some pressure contours. I have to do you remember, Greg, if we had contours made, or did we just have pressure points?
Oh boy, I don't know. I want to say we did have contours.
Yeah. We've discussed this issue about who's impacted, and it gets very complex, but for the most part, the people that are the least impacted are probably going to be people in North Farmington and Manchester out of anybody. And I know what you're getting at, Doug. If we build a transmission line to Pactiv, does that alleviate the need for the tank? It really doesn't. In fact, the tank is supposed to be larger than it really is. But I think Derek took into account that the transmission main is still going to provide a certain amount of flow in addition to the tank. So we're able to reduce the tank size. If you just strictly took 10 state standards, looked at the max day, which is over 2 million gallons, and the fire flow, the tank would need to be 3 million gallon tank. So.
But we have an empty tank that we could hit from Pactiv with a golf ball that's just standing there. And instead of looking at the municipal boundaries, if we look at the resources that are available, why can't we reprioritize and come up with alternative solutions, as opposed to saddling our town of Canandaigua residents with a potentially 35 to 50% tax increase?
Well, Doug, the other thing is the existing tank is 55 years old. So.
Right, and I get that, but you guys have the demand in Farmington, right? And so I guess I keep going back to, and obviously we have growth also, but outside of Pactiv, you've referenced Pactiv a couple of times with the fire piece there. Other than that, the real demand, I mean, our residents have the pressure. The issues that I kept hearing about for the last couple of years were the pressure issues that the residents of Farmington are having, right? And not being able to get it. So again, why should the town of Canandaigua residents pay for the water to get to Farmington?
Well, it's the residents in the district. It's not the whole town.
Yeah.
Right. Right, no, I get that.
Yeah, there might be some confusion. I mean, the pressure zone that the tank is in is all the same. So it's Canandaigua and it overlaps into Farmington is all the pressure zone that's on the tank. So, and I'm using Pactiv just as an example because it's the worst case scenario. So that's what a lot of the basis is. But that doesn't mean that if Pactiv goes away, our problem goes away. It still needs, the tank still needs to be there at the elevation that it's at. And it is going to impact the pressure drop that you're seeing in Canandaigua.
But Bill, have we looked at the tank that's in the city that's literally sitting there?
Oh,
Oh,
The
North
tank
Road.
that right
the
down the
north,
street from
yeah, the
Pactiv.
North Canandaigua
Oh,
tank you're talking
No,
about.
North Road was locked out a long time ago as well. In fact, I think at the same time this occurred to our Brickyard Road tank, North Road tank got locked out and they did, if I remember right, I think they did try a pumping system. They tried a whole bunch of things to try to make that work. My understanding now is it's offline. Is that right, Greg?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's been empty for
been
a number of years.
abandoned,
It's
I
just a
think.
cell tower now.
Right, it's just but that's what I'm saying. Instead of us spending all this money, and if you're saying that Pactiv is part of the issue, is there a way that we can connect Pactiv with that tank to feed that to help alleviate this other issue?
No, that tank is in the same predicament that ours is. So it won't improve matters because the hydraulic height of that tank is too low to help alleviate the problem.
Doug, are you saying to make the North Road tank a dedicated tank for Pactiv?
Well, not necessarily, but maybe, I don't know. I'm just throwing out questions
If
and,
it-
and
if
ideas.
It's
Is
more
it-
a
is
question
that-
of what would happen if you put it into the system.
Well, it wouldn't
Yeah,
do
that
anything
tank's
if you put it
usable.
onto the system now. It's not usable now.
It creates
It's in the same condition as Brickyard tank. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
Doug,
too low.
one warranted comment could be if a transmission main could be built to Pactiv, but it doesn't get us, it doesn't mean that we won't have to do anything. We still would have to build a tank. We still would have to build the tank at the hydraulic grade that we're at, so an elevated tank. I don't know that it would reduce our demand enough so that, I mean, our normal demand is over 2 million gallons, so I don't even think it would affect the size of the tank that we would need. Conceptually, we could try to see if it would impact the project at all. I can't see how it would, but we could maybe spend a little more than just a few minutes of us talking to confirm that. But Pactiv would need probably a sizable line, probably 18 or 24-inch line dedicated from the city tank.
What we currently have that runs along Pactiv, that's either a 16 or a 20-inch currently next to Pactiv.
Right.
That's from a 24-inch.
And they draw such fire flow that it drops the pressure in that line, you know, below the standard. So it's,
Well, has anyone considered doing what we've done, putting in pressure sustaining valves along the way so that you don't have that issue?
where,
I don't know, that's what I'm asking. I don't know where.
Yeah,
you
there's
put it, Bill.
because the source of supply is the city tanks,
yeah,
and it's all off the same grade. And I think that's the other part is to understand is that this new tank that we're talking about, we're putting a wash bowl of water up at an elevation that's very similar to the city grade. It's really, I mean, you're talking only a few feet difference, right? From the city elevation to this new tank elevation. Both the tanks that we're talking about, the North Road tank and the existing Brickyard tank, sit, you know, nearly 100 feet below that. That doesn't, it's not, that's how significant the delta is.
yeah.
So it sounds like, Greg, that I say all, but when you say it that way, like really what it comes down to is you're looking to get the new tank, the same elevation, would be higher than the city's water tanks or a few feet lower? Because if you go higher, you won't be able to fill it.
Right. It's a few feet lower. And we
Okay.
did create provisions to add pumping in the future, because a lot of this is based off of, you know, the system as it stands right now, plus, you know, a little forethought looking into the future. But every time we make adjustments to the distribution system, like if everyone recalls, they ran that transmission main in large part to support Pactive. And as an unintended consequence, when they ran that by, they locked out 2 tanks. So that's kind of the whole crux of this issue is we're trying to put the fire storage and the supply storage at the correct elevation so that that the tank cycles, we keep fresh water and we appropriately support the system dynamics. So we're not, dropping 20, 30, 40 pounds, every Wednesday or every other Wednesday, whatever it is for Pactive tests, because it does crush the system. But that's not the only reason. I'm just saying that's part of it, and it'll all help buffer that. So if there's other demands that come on, like Uptown develops, there's going to be a sizable demand from Uptown, so that would be supported by this tank, because each of these areas need to have a certain amount of fire flow supply. And the difficulty is when you go ahead and take all your fire storage, we're gonna say, well, we're gonna just leave it all in the city of Canandaigua's tanks. We both know that the city originally has always told us to keep those tanks full, which, all well and good. On paper, everything that's great. But then we find out that they get about half full, right? Because we see it on our suction supply at the booster station. So they don't actually keep it all the way full. So we don't have that fire storage always available. So we need to have that fire storage available for the Canandaigua Farmington district and points beyond.
I get that, but are there ways to do it more cost effective? I mean, and even like the tank location, right? Have we really taken a serious look at that? So I'm looking at contour map right now, and it looks like to me the tank is around 780, 790, and the town hall campus property is at a contour elevation of like 890. So, I mean, should we be thinking about, is that the right location? Because you keep talking about having to build this huge tank up in the air, right, to get to the proper height. Should we be looking
right,
at different
but then
spots?
we'd have to take all the feed from Canandaigua Farmington back into the town of Canandaigua's highway campus site and then go back north. It's just a lot of extra pipe to facilitate building a shorter tank.
Transmission pipe, which
Yeah,
talking 24-inch, maybe larger. And the pedestal of the tank, yes, going up that high adds, obviously we see the cost. I mean, the cost is through the roof. There's no denying that. But all you're talking about is shortening the pedestal of the tank, which you can shorten the pedestal 50 feet, might save us, maybe it saves us $500,000 at the most. What do you think, Greg?
yeah, I think you're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
The tipping point was that 120 feet of pedestal elevation, because it changes the means and methods to get concrete higher up.
But if we can locate it 100 feet, that's 100 feet higher. I think Jared was getting ready to say something. I'm sorry, Jared.
No, I'm thinking if we change because I'm trying to find the tank and the contours and all those as well. If there's another area where we could put that, because if we're raising it 100 feet, then that's 100 feet of pedestal, if I'm understanding correctly, that we don't need to get the tank at the proper height.
If we could find the elevation to take the tank down to 100 feet, reduce it by 100 feet or build a standpipe, it would certainly save on the cost of the tank. We'd have to, though, get transmission lines to whatever site. And I will be honest, we didn't take that far of a step back. I don't know if it was done back in 05, it could have been. And look at alternative sites. But if you have another high point in the town of Farmington or Canandaigua, just understand that we'd have to get large transmission mains in and out of there as well to make a shorter tank work.
Right, but if we move the tank all the way south, we have essentially a dedicated line that runs out and hits Farmington Zone 2.
Yeah,
right.
You're right.
So you would have to build a water main from the town campus all the way to Town Line Road.
Yeah, you're not making the situation. You're actually making the situation. You're putting it back to the way that it is, because now if you're farther away from Farmington and Manchester, you've got to build that much bigger transmission main to get it there to begin with. That's the predicament that we're in. We're relying right now solely on the transmission main to get water. We really don't have storage until there's a fire demand or a max day or peak hourly demand, probably. So that's what you're getting at, right, Greg, is that the farther we put the tank from Farmington, the worse off we're gonna be, really.
Right, but I mean, that's how it's designed right now, is that
Right.
the outlet of the tank actually, you know, there's interconnecting and there's some check valves. You know, we did some engineering magic there with valving to make it so that we can support zone 1, but you know, the actual outlet of the tank goes to zone 2. So that was part of how we keep the water fresh in the tank, was to, you know, force the demand of zone 2 and 3 in Farmington to come out of that North Farmington tank on a regular basis, with the hydraulic benefit being there with the valving that we put together for zone 1, because zone 1 is the city grade.
But let
That's
me ask
really
you
complicated. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Yeah.
this. So you're
Hey,
pulling
guys.
the water from the transmission to fill the tank, regardless of where it is. But hypothetically, let me ask you this. Let's say I'm looking at Martinsia Park. It looks like it's around 650. I know that's less than what that current tank is. But if the tank was up there and you're pulling and filling it, wouldn't that have the same effect? And maybe we have more room. Maybe we don't have to go up as high.
But then I got to build coming all the way back from Retensia back to zone 1.
But what? There's already the lines there.
It's the presence of the, yeah, but has more to do with where it's where the water is held. So, you know, if I take that quantity at that elevation, I move it up to Mertensia, I have to deal with all the line losses going back all the way to Pactive. So some of it actually, it's the Brickyard site actually works better to have that source closer to the Pactive supply or they're drawing, so that I don't negatively impact more of the system. So the greater distance I create between those 2 points, the more significant the pressure reduction is when they pull their fire flow, if that makes sense.
But if the current tank was left there and online for those situations, wouldn't that take care of that issue without having to do anything
But
else?
but it would be locked out. So it's still a
But
health
only for a
violation.
fire. You said when a fire kicks in, it's not locked out, right?
Yeah, but
Right,
what
but it's-
happens, Doug, is one of the other issues you gotta realize, there's a couple other things. You know, one is it's only 1 million gallons, so the health department's looking at it like you don't even have enough to meet your average day demand, which is unheard of.
But Bill, what I'm saying is if you add, let's hypothetically say you add 1 million gallon tank at Martinsia.
And storage out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Plus that one. So now you have 2 million.
Yeah, and then like Greg was getting at, you're still locked out until there's a fire demand. Now, the problem with that is the water sits in the tank, maybe for weeks, maybe a month at a
More
time.
like months. More like months.
Chlorine residual in that water. The reason the health department doesn't like that is because that water can start to grow bacteria. And then once you do enter it into the system, you have the potential to have an outbreak of some sort. You know, you have basically unchlorinated water, and the health hazard that the health department is citing is just that, just the fact that water sits stagnant for too long.
Hey, guys.
Yep.
Another high volume, Robin just brought to my attention, over on 332 there by County Road 8, acoustics.
Yeah.
They're a high volume water user. They average about 700,000 gallons a quarter.
No, it's more than 7 million gallons.
7 million gallons? Oh, sorry, a quarter.
Decimal.
Yeah, there's no doubt there's need, and I've got this project Kent, Matt Horn knows about this. I don't know if I've talked to you guys lately about this. I mean, there's possibility that's moving forward, that there's water need there. There's definitely water need, but obviously that you're talking about a substantial increase in the cost versus what we originally did, and trying to avoid essentially a 35 to 50% tax increase. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is there a way to lay off some of the costs? I mean, we keep talking about Pactive. Pactive is one of the reasons why you have to have this huge volume, you know, on standby, if you will. Is there a way to get a contribution from them, you know, to offset the cost, or from the high volume users to, you know, let them pay a little bit more for water than a resident on, you know, one of our roads in our town? You know, because it's, I mean, it's not Joe Blow sitting up here on McIntyre Road that is causing this issue. It's because we have to have this kind of flow, because you have to have turnover in the tank. Is there, do they pay the same rate as just the average user, the same cost per, gallon of water? Do they pay the same O&M rate? I mean, is it?
Well, the OMN's, is your assessed value, but the revenue side, they always pay more because they have larger connections. A house might have a 3/4 or an inch line where the commercials pay because they have a 6-inch line or a 12-inch line. There's more in charge in that quarterly bill, also based on the volume.
Well, but
Well, even with active out of the picture, that system still does not work.
Right.
So, I mean, if you took active and just shipped them away, you still have to do something with that tank.
yeah, but
Because
is
it don't
something
work.
still 13 million bucks?
It actually is, Terry. I hate to say it, but just to meet to get the tank at the right elevation to function, okay, that's height. And then volume at 2 million gallons, Pactiv is our biggest impact, but take Pactiv out of the equation. The next guy just still needs 3,500 gallons a minute, fire flow. So it doesn't change the size or the elevation of the tank.
Bill, have we ever, I say we, as Canandaigua Farmington, and maybe Robin knows this, done a fire flow study without the existing tank? Like with the one that's you want to replace, if you had it off, what type of flows do you get just from the city? Does anyone know that?
The model tells us that right now, Jim, and I would say it's just a model. I hate to even rely on something
get
like
it.
that, but it is pretty accurate. I mean, Derek has tweaked it over however many years we've had it. So, and that's part of the problem is when he shows fire flow in any one condition, we see a big pressure drop. And I don't know if you remember, maybe Robin will remember, you guys had a big break out by the throughway somewhere. Remember when we had all the calls on the pressure problem and you had a big longitudinal break, I want to say.
Yeah, or just the other side of the throughway.
And we saw the impact of that on the pressure, and that's kind of simulating the same thing, right? We've got a big fire flow or big demand, and we got calls. You got calls all through the roof, right, Robin?
Yeah, and it wasn't just for that area. I mean, it affected the whole system. I mean,
Understood.
we got pressure sustaining, but the only thing pressure sustaining does is just slows down the flow to the fire hydrants. So if you're fighting a fire and you're using a lot of water and the sustaining comes on, it holds the pressure back behind that toward Canandaigua, but it don't allow the flow to go toward the fire.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but what Bill explained isn't in the town of Canandaigua, it's in Farmington. So my question is, what goes on in the Canandaigua portion when it comes to fire flow? Because what I hear is we need a higher tank to get pressure north, and it would help out Pactiv and the other place if there was a fire flow. But if there isn't a fire, most of the time you just run off the city's tanks. There's no need for this large tank, particularly I'd say in the town of Canandaigua, other than for a fire flow.
Well, when they pump at Pactiv, when they do their test once a week
Yep.
or every 2 weeks, it'll drop the pressure over by the school, which is in Canandaigua, down to like 20 pounds. So
Now, are you tied into the school?
we're
Are
not
you
tied.
saying, or Robin, when you say at the school, like, because it's coming off that 24-inch main, it drops the city system?
Right, it drops, well, we're tied together there,
Yep,
valved off,
okay,
but over in
Okay.
that area, it drops the pressure.
Okay.
significantly.
yeah, I wasn't aware of that, Robin.
It's just reflected back through the whole,
Yeah.
like a wave, I think, like you said, Bill.
The Exactly.
maybe we should invite the city to this conversation too then.
Yeah, that's their
Well,
system over there.
I mean,
So, Jim, it's a good point to bring up because it was discussed and Derek, brought it up first that we have check valves at the city line, and if they put bi-directional meters in there and pulled them out, they would also probably equalize their system a little more from the tank. It would, the wave would go back that far. So there could be a benefit to that, but, I don't know that they have any interest in, they don't have the severity of a problem as we do, right? They're still in compliance. The pressure drop to them isn't as much, and they have tons of storage at the water plant. So, we did think about that.
Robin, or maybe Greg, does Pactiv have to have public water to pull from for fire flow? Because they have that large pond out front that has the ability to pump from, but I'm just curious if they have, is it something that says they have to have public water to back it up?
I think they need it for their insurance reasons. I mean, I guess if I'm reading the tea leaves, are you asking can Pactiv build their own tank? I think that's
No, my question is, why not just pump from that bigger, small pond, I say small pond, large pond out front that's, I know it's quite deep and it's always full of water. Why not use that instead of
That is part of
disrupting the
the
system?
system.
I'm sorry, was that Robin?
That is part of their system.
It is part of,
Water
okay.
storage on site is part of it's all part of their insurance and everything else.
All right.
yeah. Don't they have
What
like
they pump if they
they have
were
like
only
3
relying
pumps,
on
right?
that- If they
Yeah,
were only
I have no
relying
idea,
on
guys,
that
that's what I
pond, it would, yeah. If they were only relying on that pond and they turned their pumps on over there, that pond would be empty. Less than a half hour.
But it seems like there's enough things, enough questions. I mean, there's any number, I mean, for that matter, if the town of Canandaigua wanted to, the town board wanted to, the Uptown Business Improvement District could erect its own water tank and provide the water service to Uptown. There's any number of things. I'm wondering if there's enough questions, especially with this increased cost. I get the Department of Health has been patient, and they were with us too. But what are they going to do at the end of the day? I mean, maybe there's additional grant money that comes from these federal programs and state programs. Should we just kind of, instead of trying to push this thing through, should we pause here a second and look at this deeper?
So let me just say a couple things that Pete, I'll let you comment. A couple things, Doug, that I'll say. One, just keep in mind, we have 3.6 million on the table right now. I'm sure they would let us rebid the project. I don't think they would let us revamp the project with that money. The second thing I'll tell you is that my initial reaction when we opened bids is that there was no question in my mind that we would just rebid this project. We only had 2 bidders on the tank. So we did a lot of research in the first 2 weeks after taking bids on, what the market is like out there. Where are things trending? Do we just wait a year and rebid it? What do we do? I know I sent the information to you. It's probably overwhelming, but we did find about a half a dozen projects recently bid on elevated storage tanks, and everything has increased across the board. I don't think that our pricing on the tanks is out of the ballpark. I don't think we're gonna see anything better. In fact, a couple of tank manufacturers said as of January 1, they're gonna see a steel hike again. Now, we could take the risk of waiting a year and say, we're going to bank on it, that steel is going to come back down. It's steel and concrete and pipe are the 3 things impacting the cost, and try to hedge our bets. But I got to tell you, from what I've seen in the research we've done, I do think it's a risk. I know it's a huge cost. It's twice as much as what we thought this tank was going to be. And the pricing in 2018 and 2019 completely reflects our budget and our estimation. They're identical. We had projects that we did our budget on and our estimates on, and they were right on par until about 2020, as soon as COVID hit, and they just ramped up from there. So I don't know, Pete, if you want to add anything more to it. We've talked about it a lot, but.
Well, yeah, also, as part of the budget over the last few years, we already set $1 million aside for this project from the Canandaigua Farmington Water District. And we have a little over a $500,000 of that million left in the capital project. The current budget, we dedicated towards band interest 300,000. So as Janine sent that sheet back to you, the estimated tax rate would be for the increase in the difference between the 300,000 and what we would have to pay for payments.
So they just, this is the sheet that Peter's reflecting. They ran some new
Right.
numbers here. So they're talking about, you know, $1. But the issue that we have, right, is, okay, Town of Canandaigua resident who lives basically south of 5 and 20, serviced by Canandaigua Consolidated. We essentially did a very similar project. We just built new tanks and our tax rate is 69 cents a thousand. And if you live north of 5 and 20, it's going to be considerably higher at $1 a thousand, right? How's that fair?
It's a much bigger operation.
You'd think with volume, you get a little cheaper per unit cost. But we don't. We get almost a 50% increase.
I don't know how you compare the two, but
Well, it's a matter of the person paying the bill, right?
yeah.
So, Peter, the other thing, and I know you and I talked about a little bit, have you looked at anything in terms of maybe doing something with the water rates to help offset the tax rate, whether it's the commercial piece? Maybe there's a, you know, I think Terry was saying earlier, maybe there's a separate commercial fee.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a bad year because the water rate from the city of Canandaigua was going to go up 29 cents a thousand.
Right.
And so it's hard for us to take a big jump, whether it's residential or commercial. I mean, I did mention to Doug that Monroe County also has a daily meter charge depending on the size of the meter. That I don't know how much revenue that would raise because we haven't studied it, but you know, that's, people are still going to see an increase in their water bills, you know, with a meter charge. We could look at the higher volume customers, figure out a way, I guess, to charge them some more. The problem we've had is we haven't seen the revenue increase over the last 2 or 3 years, even though there's a lot of home building, because all the older residences in the district have now converted their toilets and their shower heads and everything. And so they're using less water, or the kids are out of the house now and it's 1 or 2 people in the home, and you know, they're using 6,000 to 8,000 gallons a quarter versus 12,000 to 15,000 on an average home with kids, you know. So we have not seen a lot of rise in the volume, which, you know, increases the revenue, especially in a wet year.
Right, it's always challenging to try to collect debt service through a water rate because, you know, just the way the economy works, people see a higher water rate, then they're more conservative in their water usage.
Little risk.
Yeah. Was there any consideration, and I probably not, but of like as Doug and Terry said, the commercial side, maybe that possibly goes up a little bit, but you keep the residential side down, to help the taxpayer in the town of Canandaigua with their O&M rate. And the other thing we gotta look at too is what happens to our tax cap next year, depending on which one you guys go with. because all the special districts were figured into that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can charge a separate tax rate levy. The levy may have to be the same. We'd have to look at that, right? I think that may have to be the same, but it would be more on the, if there were extra revenue sources from the commercial side that would offset the annual operational cost, thereby reducing the need to levy as much.
How about approaching Pactus, since that's the one we keep talking about for a contribution towards this 13 million bucks? $1 million out of them, or $2 million out of them is being a good neighbor in the community. That somehow reduces total bill.
Well, Terry, along that line of thinking, that's where I go back to. I don't know if we should really be rushing this forward as much as, and I get the grant, but I mean, we got the grant before. I'm sure we can go get it again, right? It is a risk, yes, but relooking at this, I think it's hard to single out Pactiv, right? They're the largest employer in Ontario County. They're by far the largest employer, private employer in the town of Canandaigua. And, we put too much pressure on them. It's this constant battle to keep them, right? But to your point, though, this is where maybe there's additional conversations with the IDA about providing this level of money or maybe some support for this to provide this level of service. You've got the airport, you've got Pactiv, you've got Acustos, we've got Project Kent now maybe. Those are mega employers for the county. Maybe there's other revenue sources to factor into this.
Point.
Well, they should be explored, I would think, before we pull the trigger and this whole effort.
So, Bill, and I know I hear one thing about slowing things down, but how long of a time frame can you give the bidders before you have to give them an answer?
So that's the other concern. Two things I want to bring up is the tank bid itself. There's $1 million in between the two bidders. So our upper bidder and some other tank manufacturers, Caldwell is our low bid. They're actually surprised that they could be as low as they were, believe it or not. I hate to say that, but that's what the feedback was. So that's one thing to consider. Right now, we don't have written confirmation that Caldwell is going to hold the price, although we're figuring that they will. The contract requires them to hold 60 days. But as you guys know from the emails, to go through the 202B and go through the bond resolution, it's going to take us slightly longer than that. So two options we have is we try to get all four bidders to hold their price. Typically in this situation, they will, Jim. We've had a number of other multi-million-dollar projects bid with the same situation recently with COVID. And most people will hold their bid for that time. It's getting harder and harder with the way things fluctuate. The other option is to award the pipeline contracts and things are below the bond resolution right now. And we would just have to hold the tank bid for another probably 20 or 30 days and see if Caldwell would do that. I can't imagine that they would lose the job, over 30 days, even in this environment. But
Bill, in your opinion, if you had to choose new pipe versus new tank, what would be the priority?
well, they go hand in hand. It doesn't do us any benefit to do either one alone, really. I mean, honestly, if we award the pipe, we're locking ourselves to award the tank, but it gives us the time. First of all, it takes any risk of any of those other contractors to come back and say, well, we can't hold our bid for that amount of time. We get that off the table and just have to deal with the tank manufacturer. That's the only benefit of awarding sooner than later.
Well, the reason I ask is, let's say we hear you say about the tank over and over, its condition of lockdown. Yes, I know you don't have a transmission main going to the north, but you still have a water main going to the north. You could still, because you're not going to put a new water main going south to Pactiv. All you're trying to do is balance the water when it comes to pressure when they test. So if you only did the tank, I don't know what it costs, but would that be something you could do now? Then maybe possibly in a few years when things might come back to normal, you do the pipe project. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, it's a possibility, you know, you'd only be using that 10 inch, so
I know,
you'd raise the pressure grade, but you probably during high demands to the north, it just wouldn't benefit Farmington very much until that transmission main's built is the bottom line.
Yeah, it would also necessitate a significant redesign on the tank inlet outlet because we're running dedicated inlet and outlet lines.
Yeah,
And there's only a single line that runs up there now, so it would definitely change how we set up, you know, zone 1, zone 2, and some of those other changes that we're trying to make.
the PRV vaults would not.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of the stuff that we did on Town Line Road, that would be impacted.
Right.
well, I'm just trying to think of the bottom line for our towns, you know, why I'm throwing.
Yeah. No, it's, you know,
Terry, Jared, you
Understandable.
guys get votes in this. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm not comfortable at all with a 40% increase. I would rather be cautious and see what other options are on the table. Going forward, think of maybe there are other different options outside the box that we haven't thought about yet. Talking to Pactiv, talking to the county, seeing what other opportunities would be out there for funding, and even locations. I don't think we take anything off the table right now to look at.
Terry, you have any thoughts?
I pretty much expressed mine. It's frustrating. I mean, it's the pride, you know, if this had been done a few years ago before all this COVID stuff, we probably would have just proceeded. We passed that resolution in 2017, you know, to go ahead with this at the $9 million level. And I'm not exactly sure why it didn't occur before now, but you know, it's I don't know. I mean, just leaving it as status quo and trying to go forward is going to create its own set of problems. I really don't think, my own opinion, and it's not based on any expertise, but prices go up, they rarely come down. They won't come down to what they were. It's going to be more expensive than it would have been a few years ago. So it's really I would like, as Jared said though, and as I said earlier, I'd like to find out if there is some money out there someplace else. You know, can we talk to Pactiv, talk to high volume users? Would they make some contribution to help us alleviate the cost for the people in our town, the people in Farmington? I mean, as an employer, it impacts the whole area, as Doug said. So we'll talk to them, talk to the county, and I don't know if you could stall these guys for 3 or 4 weeks, give some time to have these conversations. And if there's nothing else out there, then we're faced with yes or no.
Yeah,
If there is something else out there to mitigate the cost, then we grab it and run with it.
I
But
think
Bill and
Terry-
Greg,
think-
I'll remind you guys that I have a 4-person board right now, and I feel like some days I get paid for reading tea leaves, and I would say you guys have more work to do to get this thing passed by the town board of the town of Canandaigua. So,
Yeah,
Well, one thing, Doug, I gotta tell you, and I gotta say a couple things for Jared, first of all, you know, I understand and I can appreciate the fact of taking a step back. As being the town of Farmington and the town of Canandaigua's engineer for, I don't even know how long before I even came here, I can tell you that a lot of options and a lot of research and a lot of investment has been put into this tank. More than even should have been, I'll tell you, it's been studied to death. I look back at the studies that we've done, and I can't believe we spent so much money and time, and we've come back to the same conclusion every time. So I just want you to know that I can understand from someone looking at it brand new, hey, let's take a step back. I just want you to know that
No, I appreciate that.
you guys can make the decision, and that's okay. We'll take a step back and look at other options. I just want you to know, I can't even explain to you today how much time and effort has already been put into it. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
And to Terry's credit, I think we probably could hold the bidders off for a week or two and try to do some real quick legwork to try to get some more funds put towards it. But these bidders nowadays are gonna cringe at even holding the bid by the contract 60 days. They're already yelling at us like we can't hold our bid for 30 days. Nobody gives them a quote that's good for more than a week right now. So I think it's probably doable, you know, if we're talking a week or two and hold them off a little bit, maybe hold your board meeting off or have your board meeting and then do a special meeting in a week or two and see what you learn. But
Well, we have our organizational meeting next Monday where we'll relitigate this thing in a sense.
yeah,
And at that meeting, we planned on scheduling a public hearing for January 31st, which is, 3.5 weeks away. I would think we should continue with that. But in that interim period, in those, from the 10th to the 31st, try to get some answers from these other entities that we've mentioned. And if we can get some help, great. If we can't, then we hold a public hearing and we have to make a decision.
And I know somebody was saying like 30% cost or something, but I was just crunching the number. Like I was getting 17% on the 30-year bond, the tax rate increase, and obviously the 25-year and the 30 and the 20-year will be a little bit higher tax rate.
Well, what do they pay now?
85 cents.
Makes sense.
85?
85, yeah.
$1.05 was the high number, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, so 20 cents on 85. Yeah, it's 17%, roughly.
Peter, would you be, as the town of Farmington thought about how many years they want to go?
Well, all along I was saying 20, but I guess I'd like to be in the middle, 25-year max,
Peter, have you run any multi-year projections or working with Janine? You might not have done this yet, assuming that, what this would be 5, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, assuming the normal cost increases for operations of the district and stuff, what the tax rate would be?
No, I mean, just, the last 2 or 3 years, I've been increasing the tax rate just to get to that $300,000 a year bond payment.
Right.
Um,
But obviously expenses, equipment, everything continues to go up. So
Right.
we're looking at a snapshot of $1 or $2 right now, but that's not realistic. 5 years, 10 years from now, what's the real tax rate going to be?
right.
how's your assessed value been over the last couple of years, Pete? Has it been on, I'm assuming on a rise, but I just don't know proportionally.
Yeah, well, both towns were at what, 95% assessed value rating by the state, and both towns are going through a reval right now. So at 1.2 million, give or take a few $100,000, assessed value between the two towns and the district will definitely go up.
Yeah. With
And-
the rate of growth too, I mean, I would foresee that, well, I think Doug, you raised a good point. In 5 years, with the development that's occurring there, the total assessed value goes up 20-30%. I would think that that's gonna help alleviate the burden on, your regular users, Jim, like your regular residential users.
Well, there's so many valves, right, through the budget process to look at. So then the other thing that we haven't talked about is the percentage, the way that the agreement is between the town of Canandaigua and Farmington for the water district. I think right now it's 75-25 or 80-20 or something or other, the percentage,
The assessed value, yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I mean, we could look at some sort of, should we look at some sort of an agreement or something? That's just something else to discuss as we talk about this stuff.
And what, Doug, in the uptown, I know you mentioned possibly a large growth.
Yeah.
Do you see, how much of that do you see in the next 5 years?
That'll be interesting. I think a lot of that depends on one single project, but we have in the pipeline identified right now projects, if they all come to fruition, taking the assessed value of Uptown from about 80 million to about 400 million, so there's you know, a pretty sizable increase in the assessed value in that area.
Yeah,
But we have, and again, I go back to these valves things, right? And for Jared and Terry, and we can have more of these conversations, right? If we want to try to help the town of Canandaigua residents, right, we now have the uptown bid. That gives us another valve that we can look at and play with, right? And so, because that's predominantly commercial, right? So maybe there's a way that that takes on some of the costs to offset the resident, you know, so we just have stuff to talk about, so.
okay.
When would these increased rates actually kick in for people? I mean, the project has to be awarded, bid, constructed. I mean, it's probably gonna not be until at the earliest, later, 2023, 24.
Yeah, Bill just
In
did
that period
a,
of time, we're gonna see growth.
yeah, Bill just did a flow, which is very, very, very draft until he hears about the production time on the tank and everything, which would be the big cost, but he, you know, the project wouldn't be finished till almost the end of 2023.
Right, so 24.
So, you know, that, again, some of that money, you know, when we go from a ban to a bond, it can be split out over a couple of years also, you know.
Yeah, BPD showed your debt service starting in 2023, but it seems to me we won't even close on the project, so that might be a year off. I would think, Terry, typically with these size projects, the debt service is gonna kick in like 2024, I would say here.
Yeah.
You know, you'll have an interest payment because we're just going out the bond, right? And no.
Yeah, you have your band payment.
Your band payment, yeah.
Yeah.
But in that 2-year period of time, hopefully we'll see some growth that, you know, assessed value will go up and the average cost will come down, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Also realize that the maturity schedule that Donegan ran, it was on, I think it was on 4%.
yeah.
So I mean, that's probably conservative on that size note.
Yeah. Yeah, 20-year bond, they had 3.5% and 30-year 4%.
Yeah, you're
Two other
gonna
things, and I know, two other things, and I know nobody in Canandaigua wants to do this, but you know, for just so that we have discussed it, is in the 2022 budget, we have 300,000 for North Road, and we planned from the October meeting, put 250,000 in the 2023 budget. So, you know, that's, I know you don't want to put that off. There's funds there that could be used. And the other thing that neither one of us want to do, but you know, it should be discussed at least, is there, you know, both towns could look at their ARP funds and dedicate a small amount of that to this. And so I just wanted to bring that up in case somebody asks that question, you know, Monday or after that.
Yeah, true.
Good points.
Okay.
Hey, you know, I love you guys at MRB, but I just throw it out there on the cash flow analysis, and I just glanced at this, but I saw the one you did, Bill. One of the engineering subtotals was 774,000, and another was 1.2 million.
Okay.
Hoping you're not looking for a $500,000 increase.
We're always looking for a $500,000 increase.
I'm sorry, Doug, what are you talking about?
Yeah, let me show you real quick. I can share my screen since I got the thing. So you've got on this cash flow, you've got 774 here for engineering, and this is dated 12/21. But then this, that's 2019-21. I just don't know what this is. It says 1.2 million.
No, I have to look at that.
Sounds like Farmington's getting a deal.
That's some work for you, side work for you to do. So
Yeah, I don't
Thanks,
know.
Doug.
I'll take a look.
I thought MRB was donating their services for this project as long as it's taken. So
I can guarantee you they have not been to date.
The reason that cost of the project going up, is the price of steel, concrete, and everything you mentioned, Bill.
Yeah.
Same amount of engineering, so you guys ought to be able to go. This way.
Believe me, if we were doing things based on construction costs, we'd be out of business right now, that's for sure. Our engineering percentages went from like, 15% to like 7% nowadays. I'll look at it, Doug. I don't know.
Yeah, that's.
I put it
just like-
together quick to try to prepare for this, but
No, I get it. I just had
Well,
to
15
find
to
something to
70
chide you
are-
about.
Your head's very correct.
yeah, I don't envy you guys, Terry and Jared. I don't even know what more to say. We're seeing it across the board. We do, obviously, our big water and wastewater plant projects are all coming in ridiculous values, ridiculous bid numbers, and everybody's struggling with the same thing on all these projects. And, in some cases, they're plowing ahead, with the understanding that things probably aren't going to get better. I do agree with you, Terry. I don't think steel prices and concrete are going to come back down. And some people are trying to, value engineer some things. There are, for what it's worth, there is 900,000 in contingency in this number right here, in this budget right here. And there's also a few things we've talked about already about potential value engineering. There was a conditioned interior in the shaft that's we're seeing from the contractor's values might be upwards of $400,000 or so. We could basically take that right out. They had a large number in there for the transmission main along the driveway. So whether or not we could look at alternatives to, do that ourselves or have another contractor take a look at that. There's a few things. So there certainly is ways to bring it down. And when I say that, maybe we can bring it down by $500,000. And we also have contingency, hope that we don't use. It is a pretty straightforward project, but we can't set the budget up without any contingency. That would be
Yeah.
suicide, right? But I will say that everything you're seeing in front of you is pretty conservative, and there are some things that we could value engineer. I wanted to point it out. We're not going to save $1 million by value engineering this, but we could bring it down as much as possible. So maybe $500,000, I would guess. So.
And then the transmission line bid, Bill, I know you didn't really touch that, but you did have 4 or 5 bidders that those prices were close. So even though it's $1 million higher, they were all close.
Yeah, it was a $1.5 million estimate years ago. We expected it to come in around 2.5 with the way pipe prices have increased to now, and it came in at 2.5. So that transmission piece, Jim, in for Robin, he knows as well. We already talked, but that's basically on the mark of where we see pipe prices right now. So I don't see us getting any better with that for sure.
You gotta find it.
Yeah, you gotta get the pipe. In fact, the timeframes was definitely an issue. They're saying they would, like our town line road project would be maybe impacted a little bit because they wouldn't get water main on a 16-inch, especially until nine months from now. Most of that's 12, but
Trying to find a 16-inch valve took the city 8 months.
yeah,
Get one valve.
yeah.
Yeah, I just had a call before I come into this meeting from Corin, Maine, because they're bidding for the low bidder for the pipe. And they just wanted to know kind of a time frame of when it might go through and like that, and trying to figure out lead times. And Nate told me, he says it's, 5-6 months out.
Right.
It's not something you're gonna buy right away, so.
And just for reference for everyone that might not be on the pulse on pipe, Jim, what did you buy your 16-inch main for when we did our transmission main? What was that cost?
Oh, 28, something like that.
Yeah, so he got 16-inch main for around $30 a foot. We'll say
Right.
plus or minus, right?
Yeah.
Our material cost right now on the 16-inch pipe is almost $80 a foot just for the material cost. So these are price increases that, one, they're unprecedented, but there's no end in sight to this because the feds are going to throw a bunch of money towards infrastructure. It's only going to create a larger demand, and the supply is what it is.
Yeah.
We
So,
paid $24 for that 60-inch water main 2 years ago.
I just
Yeah.
priced 12, I just priced 12-inch, $42.
Oh, my God.
So there's been a lot of conversations about this infrastructure bill and, okay, I'm gonna, maybe one thought, Doug, would be to wait, okay, let's see if we can get some more grant money towards the project, but that's the problem that I see as we go into the next 5 years, is that you think escalations are high now. We're gonna have so many projects in the works because of that infrastructure bill that I see pricing still continue to rise because it's just supply and demand, so I don't know.
Well, the China situation with COVID, I just heard on the news again this morning that that's going to be bad for at least another 2 to 3 years, they're saying, which is going to affect the supply chain, right? But Peter, from a financial side, maybe we need to get creative and think about doing a ban and then rolling that over a couple of times to see if we can get some extra money to help off pay it, instead of, locking in the cost at the cost, but then get creative on the financing side.
We can just look at that, I guess.
Good. You could delay part of the problem. I did the cash flow, Doug, but the tank coming in is the biggest chunk of the money. So there might be a way to delay a part of that short-term financing until you really actually need that money for the tank. And that'll, at least it'll help offset,
Right.
some of the debt. Or if you want to roll in over a 2 or maybe even a 3-year or a 4-year, if you have reserves to help offset, the impact won't be all in one shot, just some thoughts.
Right. More work to
Doug,
do.
you also mentioned IDA, and
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. As I was thinking about calling Schumer's office, Senator
Yep.
Schumer's office, and see if there's any additional help. So,
Right.
would you mind reaching out to IDA, and I'll
Sure.
try Schumer's office and
Yeah.
see if we get any response.
Hey, Terry, our LDC, maybe we can get our LDC behind this and really explain the potential impact. And then maybe we can get some support from that too.
Yeah.
But yes, Peter, I can do that. And that's where I mean, where, yes, the price of pipe and the construction cost is probably going to continue to go up, but if we can lock in the cost side of things, but then before we do the long-term 25 or 30-year bond, we get creative on the financing and just band-aid it with some bands in the meantime, until we can see if we can infuse some extra dollars to offset that ultimate bond cost. So
Yeah. Yep.
That's
Could
makes
be
a lot of sense, Doug.
Yeah.
Is there a way to make some kind of projection on that, so that when we do have public hearing, we could show people, here's what you might see, it's not gonna be a step function, it'll be more of a gradual, but, I don't know if you dare to factor in any kind of increase in assessed valuation, but you could take it up a few percent at least, just to demonstrate, that we are trying to keep the cost as, minimal cost increase as low as possible.
Right. Peter, I'm happy to work with you and Janine on that. We can work on
Okay.
something there. So
Yep.
Yeah, Terry, I would say in most other communities, we would say, you got level debt, just look at the number of users you have today, but in your case, a little unique because of the growth that you have in Farmington and Canandaigua. So I think it makes sense. It'll give you a better projection of what is it going to be, like Doug said, in 5 years or 10 years, what is it really going to be,
Yeah.
They are showing level debt too, so, that's, that'll be locked in and the bond rate hopefully will be less than 4%, I imagine.
yeah, I would think so.
About,
I would
every
think
percent is
so.
about 50 grand.
They
a
always-
year, so.
Well, they
They're
announced
always
yesterday
about-
they're going up though. So
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah, the Fed is making some moves that are going to increase the, well, you get to do this all over again Monday afternoon, right?
Yeah.
maybe a condensed version.
Maybe we could just play the recording, we could just.
That would really delay the meeting.
I'll I'll be
Right,
there
so-
in person, Doug, just so you know.
Yeah.
Do you-
Perfect.
do you-
I'll
do
make
you
sure Terry and Gary have darts.
think- I'll wear my armored suit, so. I love being
We
the
have
bear
armor
of bad
piercing,
news.
we have
let me
armor
tell
piercing darts in our town.
you.
Yeah, I think Terry was correct, to continue with the 2B resolution, and that buys you 2.5 weeks or whatever it is to your, when you hold the public hearing, and maybe we can get a lot more information by then.
Yeah.
And
I
then, Bill,
do
you're
think-
gonna have to work the contractors. We may not be able to award till last day in October, or last day in January, or early February.
Yeah, I mean, Pete, the bond resolution itself, if we've got it, I gotta check with Jeff, but I think you'll have to go through permissive referendum, right? 30 days,
30 days for us referendum, then you gotta do
Yeah,
a stop
and
notice.
estoppel, so that's 60 days in itself.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
after you pass the bond resolution. So-
Right.
right.
So that's why I say if the three contractors besides the tank walk about it, it's up to you guys, obviously, but you could award to them. As far as I'm aware, and then just deal with the tank manufacturer, but that's, we can get to that point when we will reach out now, though, to make sure that if we can get something in writing that they'll hold for 90 days, we'll get it,
Yeah,
Well, these guys deal with municipalities all the time, so they know that there's this process of the multi-day, permissive referendums and those kind of things. I would think they take that into account in their thinking and their, and they, even if we said on the 31st, yeah, we're gonna pull the trigger, let's go. We still have to go through these things, so it's there, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do. It's just,
Oh.
we just gotta hope that they will be willing to work with us. That's all.
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that they're aware of these time factors that are built in, but given the state of affairs right now, if they got somebody else that they can book,
There's only 4 tank manufacturers, that in the US pretty much that we work with or that are common and they're all busy. They're busy. So,
Hey, slightly different, just real quick question. Can you, for the public hearing at least, have some sort of rendering of what this is going to look like? Because I don't think the average person understands. I mean, this is going to be a lot higher. You're going to see it coming down 332. This is going to look different. It's going to be noticeable. People are going to see it.
yeah, let me see what I can do, Doug. I mean, we at least have like an elevation view of it. I don't know if we have a rendering, but we can figure something out.
we might have had to provide one to the FAA. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I know.
And maybe sell naming rights on the tank, guys.
there you go.
There you
There we
go.
go.
Advertise, right? Doug, do you think it makes sense to put a PowerPoint or something together? Or, I mean, do we need to get to that point or?
I mean, you could. I don't know. Jared, what do you think? I mean, that's. Jared, we can't hear you.
You're on
You're
mute.
muted, Jerry.
Now he's muted. He's unmuted. Still can't hear you.
No,
Negative.
Yeah.
Technology.
There, how's that? Is that?
Yeah, we got you.
Gotcha.
See, the Promethean board in my classroom runs the sound, and after 30 minutes of no use, it cycles itself off. So then it switches everything up on me. So I'm constantly trying to toggle it. I don't know if I do a whole PowerPoint, maybe a couple slides, maybe an image of the rendering, maybe definitely the projections. Current 5 years, 10 years, like we had talked about for the cost. Definitely something with the cost of what's going on with steel. I don't think the average homeowner understands the construction costs right now. That, even building a house, you're over $200 a square foot if you're building the house right now. So that blows people's minds. I definitely would have that in there. And even maybe something, Pete, if you could share some information. I don't have in front of me, you probably already shared it. maybe what you're doing with the water rate, the tax in that district in the next couple of years to kind of gradually work up to that point. Maybe it's in the next couple of years between now and then, yeah, we're not gonna be paying for it yet, but stepping it up a little bit to get to that point, so it's more of a gradual increase than people can take 3 or 4% a year for 3 years versus 0%, 0%, and then 12% 1 year. Mentally, it's a big difference.
Right.
Well, that's what we did with ours here, with
Yeah.
in anticipation of the construction of the project.
It made a big difference. A couple years, we have got a couple years to build it a little bit to that point. I would definitely be in favor of that.
Bill,
Okay.
just for your, if you get questions, explain the difference between the tank we bought and constructed versus the few manufacturers of this type of tank, because it's not the same tank.
Right.
Just, have that ability to explain that also a little bit.
Yeah. Greg, you're available for the 10th too, right? Are
Yeah.
you? Okay.
Yep.
I don't think you're going to get as many questions on the 10th as you're going to get on the 31st. Because when we do the resolution and then we advertise, that's when the public is going to be here. It's on the 31st, and they're going to want to know all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, Monday is really just, well, the people on our town board that aren't here right now,
Right.
fill them in. But as Doug said, the 31st, we're just gonna pass a resolution to set the meeting.
Right.
Yeah. You guys
Yeah, we
you'll
can-
want to book the 31st too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And Jim and I are residents of Canandaigua, Farmington. I'm already working
That's
on
right.
my speech.
I put my signs up.
Yeah.
No tank.
I already double checked and I'm not.
No, you're not, Jared.
Nope, I double checked again because I'm on the edge.
Yeah. No new tank. I already called the No Canandaigua Shores people. They're just repurposing the signs. So
Oh, great.
Flip them over.
Maybe we should contact Lamar,
right,
billboard.
exactly.
Maybe they could go up on this tank, and
Right.
Greater
Put the video
visibility.
board on that. Right.
They do a circular one going all the way around it, and we can
Yeah.
sell advertising on the Constellation tank, the Sands tank.
All right, so
There's
we'll be-
also post-construction revenue sources that might also be part of this, but I don't think it's in anyone's financial plan, but certain parts of this tank are built with the idea that there may potentially be some cell appurtenances attached to this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cell tower.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you can't count on that, but I mean, it seems like that would be a natural progression.
Yeah, it's designed that way.
Well, it's certainly gonna be high enough to get some good coverage area,
Yeah.
I know Jim always tells me that there's so many blank spots.
Well, if we build a tank in Cheshire,
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have plenty of water pressure to the north.
Okay.
There you guys. I got to run. I'm sorry, but thank you everybody for taking the time.
Thanks for hosting us, Doug.
Yeah.
All
not
right,
a
thanks,
problem.
everybody.
if you're right,
Thank you.
have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.